All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session, Smart Budgeting, Dollars and Euros and Yen, oh my. This is the third session in our Study Abroad Success Series. If you haven't seen the others, all of the recordings are available on the website. I'll give you the links to that at the end of the session. This session is being recorded, and we'll have time for questions at the end. So let's get started. Just a brief overview of what the session will look like. Anika is from the Student Money Management Center, and she's going to go over the basics of budgeting, provide some really great tips and ways to think about budgeting and saving that anyone can benefit from. Then we'll have Mapu Fang, who's one of our Study Abroad alums, share her experience with you. And then I'll finish up with some information about how to plan specifically for study abroad. Hopefully we'll be done in about 45 minutes. And then, like I said, we'll have time for questions at the end. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Anika. And Anika, I'm just going to give you control.
Thank you. Okay, hi everyone. I hope you're all doing really well today. So my name is Anika Snijman and I am a peer mentor at the Student Money Management Center. So we are basically like a free resource here on campus. We can help with anything money related, whether it's budgeting, savings, debt control. If you're new to credit, you don't really know how to go about, credit scores and stuff like that, we can help you with that. And we'll apply all of those topics to studying abroad today. It doesn't seem like it wants me to go to the next slide. There you go. Okay, so we'll be covering some savings techniques today, as well as some budgeting tips and how to build a budget, specifically for study abroad, and we'll handle some credit tips as well. So let's look at some statistics. So what is the #1 reason people drop out of school? The answer is right there, but in case you didn't guess it, it is finances. So paying for college on its own is really tough, let alone like all the extra expenses that might come with studying abroad. Slides are gone.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. So let alone all the expenses that come with studying abroad. That's why it is so important to plan ahead, to make sure you are aware of the cost that might be involved, and to plan ahead and start saving up beforehand. Okay, so budgeting. Why exactly is budgeting important? It is important to know where all your money is going. And a lot of the times whenever I ask college students if they do budget, they often say, yeah, in their head, they just keep track of their expenses in their head and they don't really like have a formal budget. But a lot of the times those small expenses, they really add up and you don't have a realistic view of what you actually spend. You might think you only eat out 2 or 3 times a month, when in reality it's more closer to 8 or 9 times. So those small expenses can really make a big dent in your budget, and you're able to afford more things and able to put more money into your savings once you know where the big problem in your budget lies. So if you want to type in the chat, I'll be monitoring that. What is some ways that you guys currently budget? Or if there's any smart ways, any apps that you have, feel free to put that in the chat right now, and then I'll cover that. But it helps you to keep track of your spending, and it helps you to keep expenses down and save money. So like I said, that way you can keep track of the small expenses, and you can really make some changes once you determine where the problem is. It also allows you to plan ahead for emergencies. A general rule of thumb here is to be able to cover at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses with your emergency savings fund. So that should be the goal, minimum of 3 months of expenses that you must be able to cover with that fund. So it's really important to have an emergency savings fund. Even for going abroad, you must have some emergency cash on hand in case something happens. And with time, it also allows you to invest your money once you have a big savings and you want to start getting your money to work for you. So some ways to budget is, I don't know if you guys are using any cool apps that could really make the budgeting like easier and less of a hassle, but one that I'd highly recommend is called mint.com. So who has heard of it? If you want to raise your hand, it's generally a popular budgeting app among college students. Okay, one person. So how it works is you link it to your bank account. And then whenever you use your card, let's say you go dining out or whatever you buy, it tracks it. So then at the end of the week, it gives you a nice little report saying exactly what you spent your money on. And that way you have a realistic view of what you spend your money on, and you don't have to manually sit down, log into your banking app and count, okay, I went to Starbucks 3 times, I ate out this amount of times. Like, it does it on its own. So you save money or you save time, and that way you can really get a realistic view. The envelope budgeting method. So who has heard about that one? Raise your hand. Okay, one person. So this is a really neat method if you mostly work with cash. So how it works is you have various envelopes. Let's say one for groceries, one for eating out, and whatever you spend your money on. And then you withdraw money out of your bank account and you put the cash into the various envelopes. So it's more visual. So throughout the month, you use the cash out of the envelope. And as you see the cash getting less and the envelope getting thinner, it should tell you to slow down. So it is more tragic to give out paper money than it is to just swipe a piece of card. So for a lot of students, this worked out really well. And then if that envelope's empty, you don't get to refill it until the next month. So that forces you to stay within your budget, and this could be really helpful if you mostly work with cash. You could just be old-fashioned, do Excel, or do put up a budget with the pencil and paper. And another neat tool that I'd highly recommend you guys use is we have a free budgeting tool on our website. So if you just go to uta.edu/money, on the left-hand side, it will say budgeting tool. If you just click on that, you can choose between setting up a monthly, a weekly, and a term budget. So yeah, that's really neat as well. You can play around with it. If you're having trouble with it, you can always just schedule a consultation with us. Due to COVID, we're only available through phone, so you can set up a phone consultation. But yeah, we can sit down and go through a budget and see where we can help you cut some expenses, give you some tips, and really personalize the session according to you. And some ways to save. So you want to either increase your income or decrease your expenses. Find some way to have more money at the end of the month so that you can start saving. But there's a lot of apps out there that can help you. You can also open a separate savings account with automatic withdrawal from your checking. This is a really smart way to save, because if you are constantly tempted to use all of the money in your checking account, that way you don't see the money that you were planning on saving. So if you just, instead of your whole paycheck going into your checking, split it so that half or maybe 70% goes towards your checking and the other part goes directly towards your savings, so you don't see it and you can just pretend it's not there. That could be helpful. Some other ways to save, you can really get creative. Some student once told me that she has this thing with her bank that whenever she swipes her card, $1 gets taken out of her checking and put into her savings. I know Wells Fargo does this for sure. I'm not sure about the other banks, but yeah, just see what your bank has to offer. They might have something like that. And it's $1 is a small amount, but at the end of a year or so, that could really add up. Is there any other ways you guys save? You can just add it to the comments as well, and I'll cover it in the presentation. So yeah, we talked about an emergency savings fund. That is really important to have. Like I said, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Another cool way is to keep your spending in check is to follow the 30-day rule. If you've heard of the 30-day rule, just raise your hand. That's a really popular one among impulsive spenders. So if you tend to just walk into a store, you see something you want and you buy it because you think, well, I got paid today, why not? The next morning, buyer's remorse might set in and you might regret that spending. So instead of going through all of that, wait 30 days before you make big purchases. Emotion is out of it, and you can logically think about it and decide, would you rather want that money into your savings to save up for your study abroad trip or whatever it is you want to save for? Or do you want that TV? That way you can logically think about it. And it's always important to track your spending. Like I said, small expenses add up. Meal prep can also save you a lot of money. If you just were to put 2 hours aside each weekend, prep some meals throughout the week so that you could just grab it on the go, that could save you a lot of money, because as students, it's tempting whenever you are between studying and between your classes to just pop into Chipotle and buy a meal, and those eating out expenses can also really add up. And the 50-20-30 rule is also really smart. It's more of a guideline, but so 50% of your checking or 50% of your check should go towards necessary expenses like food and rent. 20% goes towards your savings, and 30% goes towards entertainment. So that's a useful guideline if you don't really know how to distribute your check. And then start small, think big. If you can only afford to save small amounts each month, whether it's $20, $15, it will really add up in the long run. So still put that money into savings. Okay, and always fill out your FAFSA as soon as it opens. October 1st is when it opens every year, so fill it out as soon as possible. And always apply for all scholarships that you can. Especially on Math Scholarship, the scholarships on there, it's just for UTA students, so they're less competitive than private scholarships. But private scholarships, a good website for that is dosomething.org. That's a really good website to look at. Join on-campus organizations. A lot of them have scholarships just for their members, so less competitive. And consider working part-time. All on-campus jobs are posted on Handshake, and they work with your schedule. So if you have finals coming up, you can request off. And if you have classes, like I said, they work with your schedule. So that could also be an extra income if you're not already working. And the loans that you need to look at is subsidized and unsubsidized loans, mainly those two. Subsidized loans is the government pays the interest while you're in school, up until you graduate or up until you fall below half-time. So that's subsidized loans, but unsubsidized loans have interest immediately. So from the day you take it out. And both loans have a 6-month grace period. If your FAFSA don't give you enough subsidized and unsubsidized loans, then your parents generally can apply for the Parent Plus loan. And that loan basically works the same as unsubsidized loans. And credit, it tends to be the #1 question among students. And yeah, this can also be really useful. Like you can have an emergency credit card on hand in case of like any emergency that might pop up. So if you're wanting to start building on your credit for students, it's important to build on your credit once you feel like you're responsible enough to not ruin your credit. But yeah, like I said, it can be useful in case of an emergency, if anything happens, and yeah, to just start building on your credit from an early age. So a good credit score generally is anything from 700 and above, 750. It goes up to 850. So lenders such as banks and credit card companies use credit scores to evaluate the potential risk posed by lending money to consumers and to mitigate losses due to bad debt. So the biggest factor in your credit score is your payment history. So don't miss any payments. That's why I say it's important to only do it once you trust yourself and you think you're responsible enough for it. Because on your credit report, if you were to miss a payment, that will stay on your report for 7 years. If you get handed over to collection accounts, that will stay on your report for 7 years. And yeah, it's not like after 7 years you get rid of that credit. It just gets sold to a different collection agency and your 7 years start all over again. So these two are really good links for once you want to start building on your credit, or yeah, it's annualcreditreport.com can give you a copy of your credit history, and you can also view and track your credit score through Credit Karma. So definitely make note of those two links. They are really important. And then I just added a little template in here for like study abroad budget worksheet, just so that you can make sure that once you do set up a budget, you don't miss any expenses. And yeah, there's probably a lot of those online. So I just added this one, and it's really important to start budgeting for it early so that you can start saving up and not, you know, get surprised by unexpected costs. That's all I have for you guys for today. If you have any questions, or you want to set up an appointment or anything, you can do so on our website. It's utamoney@uta.edu, and we'll give you a call back whenever the time is right for you, or just shoot us a message on our social media platforms. But yeah, we're available Monday to Friday, 8 to 5.
Awesome. Thank you, Annika. And apologies for mispronouncing your name earlier. You may see in the chat there, Kelly just shared a copy of a budget planning form for study abroad as well. And we will send it out as in a follow-up email, so you have any documents that we refer to here in today's session. Well, fantastic. I think one of the biggest takeaways from your section, Annika, is the idea, start small, plan big. You know, these ideas of saving little bits of money here and there, it seems really small when compared to the cost of, you know, college education or study abroad. But by starting with what you can control, you start to develop those saving habits, and you start developing that discipline, and it can lead to really big things. So that's a really good piece of information. Thank you so much, Annika. Our next speaker is going to be Mapu, who studied abroad in Singapore in spring of 2019. And Mapu, I believe, aren't you are you still currently the president of the Engineering Student Council? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm currently the president of Engineering.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we're proud to have you here with us. She's going to share her information through a slightly different means. So I'm going to exit out the screen share here, and then whenever you're ready, Mapu, take it away.
Awesome, thank you guys. Let me share my screen real quick here. Are you guys all able to see my screen?
Yeah, looks good.
All right, let's get started. Well, again, welcome to this session today. I think it's a very important session because budgeting is not something you only do during study abroad, but also something you should get yourself familiar with in your daily life, okay? And with me going study abroad in Singapore, it's like a dream come true. I actually started looking into study abroad in like my freshman year, and then I actually got to go during my junior year. So if you are junior, senior, you are not late to go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about myself and why I choose Singapore. My majors are computer science and mathematics. And Singapore is like very good for technology. Beside that, food is the first love of Singaporeans. most of the household eat all their 3 meals in hawker center. So they have like about 100 something hawker center for food. And yeah, I don't know if you're able to see, but they are like a little dot down here below Malaysia. Um, and they they like very good if you want to explore South Asia. Basically, this whole area I went visited was during my study abroad at Singapore. And the last reason why, because yeah, like I mentioned, Singapore is like my dream country. It's basically it's a well, not very young country. They about like 50 something years old, but they're very safe and secure. That was one of my biggest concern going study abroad. The country was like recently ranked second on the Economist Intelligence Unit about safe cities in 2017. Like they only come just behind Tokyo. Okay, so let's go right into the budgeting. Um, this is what I think of when what I thought of when I decided to go to Singapore. So I have a budget like rent for about like $400, food about like $200 a month, and then I have this go out and traveling for like my go out is like $300 and travel is $500. I know that Singapore is quite expensive compared to other countries in Asia. And I guess like the most important part is to do your research. So I know like in your study abroad application, you also have to do it to like have a that's estimated number of what you be spending. So it's even though it's tedious, but you should write it down like just an actual number, something, and of course do your research. So my favorite website is budgetyourtrip.com. They basically tell you like how much the lifestyle cost in any country, or maybe like traveling cost in those countries as well. So I wanted to have like a little bit money before and after school to go like travel. So this is basically just my um, expecting amount of money I would put out. So like 1,000, and then around $1,400 for everything that I think I need, while including rents as well. But the reality is, it's just very hard to control yourself not to spend money when you study abroad. I totally cannot relate to this. So like I showed this one earlier, this is my expected spending, but this one is actually actual spending for each month. Um, so what happened is that I lost my wallet right before the trip. So like it was like a terrible experience at the beginning, because like I have to go and call everyone to like get my new bank card right away, and they have to do it like in emergency shipping for me, because like that was like 2 days before I was gonna go study abroad. And then another thing is like I did not do my research well. So my before school trip, I decided to go to Hong Kong, but then it got canceled because I had to had a visa, which I did not know until I got to China. So yeah, things happen, right? And then with my bank cards, I also lost them during traveling. Okay, well, I should get better at keeping track of my stuff as well, besides just money. But things happen, and I just have to like push through it. Anyway, so what I did, I had to apply for bank account in Singapore and get money from my bank account, send it over to my bank card, my Singaporean bank account, and it took like some fee from it. So that was like my unexpected spending. Um, anyway, there's other incidents as well, but I would like to go over it some other time. um, so my before school, I went to Vietnam, and um, yeah, pretty much like I got stuck in Hong Kong, and China for like a whole 2 days. And then I went back right away to Vietnam. So I have to get a whole new ticket. Like I couldn't use my the one that I already bought. So I have to buy new tickets. That's why my expense like higher than I expected. And then during January, I just kind of already like when I got to school, it's like in the middle of January. So the rest of it, it's just a lot of going out money. And then I pretty much trying to travel every month, if not every weekend. But a lot of my friends travel a lot, but I have to study too, so I can't. Um, so yeah, after school, I only went to Bangkok, China for like about 5 days because I have to go back right away from my internship. So I can't really do a lot of traveling as I want to. Okay. So just to break down a little bit my finance. I was expecting my rent to be $400. Unfortunately, my rent actually cheaper. It's about 250. And the funny thing is that I got I'm not saying the worst dorm, but basically it's the cheapest dorm and it's like no AC. And if you already know, Singapore is super hot. Anyway, I was able to deal with it because originally I am from Vietnam. So the hot weather didn't bother me much and I saved that much money. I saved about like the same amount of money for food because I didn't want to spend so much on my daily food. And then I did increase my go out and travel. So like for go out, I increased like about $100 per month, and in travel about like $200, like even out. Okay, I know I did not include in my slide, and you probably wonder where I get the money from. So I got money from well, my mom was. I was very fortunate to get my mom to like help me out during that time. So she gave me like this, just like I don't know what's the word, like monthly money allowance. Yeah, and then I also get money from my saving account because I actually save about like 5K before studying abroad. Like I know I want to travel a lot, and then other things like I know that I'm coming back to an internship and my major is computer science, so they pay very decent. So I didn't mind to like spend a lot of money and then have that money and just put it over. Yeah. Well, my final tips are okay. Right. My next slide. Okay, just a little bit before we end, my final tips are first one, live below your means. This is something I learned from my study abroad. It's like I spent too much on my study abroad, and that now I got back, I kind of like just cool down and realize that I spend more than I make, which is not a very good thing. Like you don't do that, okay? But doesn't mean you don't spend money for what make you happy. So that's my second one. Invest in your happiness. To me, traveling was more than saving money at that time. So people ask me why I travel. I would ask them why they go eat out because I eat from home. Like I usually make my food. And the last thing, of course, grade is very important. You do have to study when you study abroad. I did get A's in one of my the class that I came to Singapore for, but the rest of it, I'm not gonna mention it. It's okay. I mean, it didn't pull my GPA out that bad. But yeah, don't forget to study. That's it, you guys. Any question? Oops.
Actually, Mapu, we'll do questions at the end once we turn off the recording, but fantastic. Thank you. Great. And I loved everything you said, especially, don't forget to study. It is a study abroad experience. But that message that you said, things happen and you just have to power through. That's one of the greatest lessons you can learn from studying abroad, I think, is learning how to power through and how to be adaptable. That's great. Thank you so much, Mapu. We'll finish up. I've got just a few minutes here, some information about specifically how to focus on budgeting and funding your study abroad experience, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So here's what we're going to touch on. First, making sure you know the parameters of your program. looking at what options you have for funding your program, and then how we can make a plan to fundraise and some different tips that you can use for that. So first, the big question, how much does it cost to study abroad? And of course, it always depends, right? There's so many different variables. Roughly speaking, this is what you can expect to pay depending on the type of your program. A semester is going to range anywhere from 10 to 24,000, and there are some variables that determine that cost. Same thing for an academic year, it's going to vary. And then a summer usually is somewhere between 5 to 10,000. Now, the variables, some of the things that Mapu talked about, where are you going? What's your location? Some places are more expensive than others. What's your housing options? She opted not to have air conditioning so that she could save a lot of money on housing, which made a big dent in her rent. So that's fantastic. And then what kind of personal spending do you anticipate? That was a great site that you shared, Mapu, about trying to figure out approximate costs so you can plan your budget ahead of time. So figure out the cost parameters of your program. In our office, if you come in for advising, we can sit down and look through a sample budget for a program, but also make sure you know your timeline. When do you need to start paying money? And again, it depends on the type of program. If you're doing a UTA faculty-led program, you need to talk to the faculty program leaders. They'll have a payment schedule set up for the cost of the program. If you're going through one of our affiliate programs, they'll have their own payment schedule as well. And then if you're going through an exchange program, like what Mapu did, then it's the regular UTA billing cycle that you would be paying on. So just make sure you're aware of who you need to talk to and where to find the information about when you need to start making payments. Okay, so how are we going to put together enough money to go on a study abroad program? Well, first of all, you need to know that financial aid can be applied to a study abroad experience. So just as if you were spending a semester on campus, you can have that financial aid applied to your study abroad. However, the details of what of your financial aid package can be applied and how it's applied, make sure you talk to your financial aid advisor about that. In terms of scholarships, we have a lot of scholarships available for study abroad students. Nearly 50% of our study abroad alums that we surveyed did receive at least one scholarship. Note that everyone is eligible for the International Education Fee Scholarship, which is managed through our office. Kelly just posted a scholarship handout, which has a great list of scholarships that are available. You can also find that information on our scholarships website. And again, if you come in for advising, we're happy to talk you through those scholarships and some of the eligibility factors there. There's no limit to how many scholarships you can apply for, as long as you meet the eligibility requirement. Just make sure you're aware that different scholarships will have different deadlines, and they may not be the same as your program application. So map it out on a calendar, make sure you're on top of all of your scholarship deadlines, apply early. A few more tips for scholarships. Most of them will require an essay, so make sure you have somebody look over that essay before you submit. We're happy to look it over in our office. Just give us maybe a week's heads up, so don't send it to us the night before it's due. But there's also the Writing Center available to look over your writing. And if you have a classmate or a friend who's a strong writer, get them to take a look. The more eyes you can have on something, the better when it comes to writing. Be aware that most scholarships will not fully fund your program. So don't just bank on one scholarship if that's what you need for your budget. Apply to several and try to cover those costs. And similarly, don't anticipate always getting the maximum amount. It's better to under budget what you think you'll get from a scholarship. If you get more, great, that's bonus. But that way you can have a realistic expectation. And then are working right now, check with your employer. Sometimes they have scholarships for students, either specifically for studying abroad or just for general education. One of our student workers, she was working at Chipotle, and she just inquired randomly if they had any scholarships, and sure enough, she was able to get some funding from her employer. So you never know unless you ask. If you receive any veterans benefits, then it is possible to apply VA benefits. There might be some stipulations on what type of program you can go or what type of credit you can get on a study abroad experience. So just talk to a VA counselor, and the sooner you can do that in the process, usually the better. So a few personal tips that kind of follow up with what Annika and Mapu both said. I am one of those people who do not naturally budget. I am a spender through and through. And what helped me learn to get on a budget was marrying somebody who is very budget minded, my wife. Now, I'm not recommending that you get married solely to find someone who can help you with a budget, but find a budget buddy, somebody who's really good at this. They've gone through it before. And if you're not sure who to look for, reach out to the Student Money Management Center. They're an amazing resource and they can help you develop those skills. But this was one thing that really helped me, was finding somebody who kind of balanced out some of my weaknesses and helped me learn how to get it on a budget. By the way, we did the envelope method, and that's what really helped me figure out, here's how much I physically have, and once it's gone, I can't spend anymore. I have to wait till next month. Second quick tip, don't just think about that big budget, that big cost. Oh my gosh, I have to raise $6,000, right? On one of our vacations, Sarah and I climbed Adam's Peak in Sri Lanka, and it is a beast to climb. It's just stairs all the way up the mountain. And if we had just looked at the top of the mountain the entire time, we never would have made it. It would have been too daunting, and we would have given up. Instead, we started saying, hey, when we get to that next plateau, we'll stop and rest. Hey, okay, let's get to that next landing and enjoy the view. And then finally, we got to the top, and it was amazing. Same thing for your financial goals. Think in increments. Plan stages, fundraising goals along the way to your final budget. And then when you reach those goals, give yourself small rewards. Even if it's something as simple as, you know what, I will buy that really fancy, super sweet Frappuccino from Starbucks to celebrate I met my goal. It doesn't matter what the goal or what the reward is, as long as it's something simple that doesn't interfere with your budget and helps you feel like you've accomplished something. These really helped us in our budgeting, personal budgeting goals. So in terms of fundraising and how can I start pulling together different funding options? Well, you need to create a plan. First, think about your available resources. These could be your skills, what you have access to in terms of materials, your friends, what skills do they have that they might be willing to donate to you? And also think about your community. Who can you reach out to? Think about who your target audience will be. Who are you hoping to ask for money? And what are their unique circumstances that you need to take into consideration as you put together a fundraising plan? And then think about your timeline. What can I realistically accomplish in X number of weeks? I'll give you 2 sample ideas of plans and then a few general ideas as well. This one was for a student, not a UTA student, a different school, but she put together a letter writing campaign, right? She put together basically a newsletter about this experience she wanted to have, why it was important for her degree, and how people could help make it a reality. A couple of things to think about if you're going to write a letter to people and ask them for money. It's good to mention what other sources you're already tapping into. People want to see that you are working on this and that they can help you reach that goal, but that you're not 100% dependent on them. It just helps people show that you're invested in your program just as much as you're asking them to be. Again, make sure you have someone proofread anything that you send out to people, whether it's a letter, a physical letter, or anything online. Have another set of eyes on it. And then if you are doing something physical like a letter writing campaign, include a pre-stamped envelope so that people can easily return cash or checks to you. Now, I say cash and checks and you're thinking, what? Why wouldn't I just do Venmo? Why not just do PayPal, right? Again, think about your audience. Who really appreciates handwritten letters or receiving something in the mail? If you're thinking people like maybe your parents' age, your grandparents, they might be more willing to send a check than to submit payment through PayPal. Again, just think about your audience and what works best for them. Recognizing that not everybody wants to send a check, Jessica, this student, also created a blog with a PayPal donation button so that she could reach an online audience as well. Another sample, this student, Robbie, he thought about what he had. He worked at a t-shirt printing company, and so he got one of his friends to donate a graphic design. He got permission to use the equipment at his work after hours, and he bought the shirts at cost. And then he printed them himself and then sold them for 20 bucks each. And he was able to raise around $2,500 in doing this, which helped cover his airfare and some personal spending. So again, think about what resources you have available to you, and then what your timeline is and how much you need to raise. If you reach out to local businesses, there are some opportunities there. They might be willing to set up a match where if you say, hey, I will do something to promote your business, and if you will match donations that I receive. People are a lot more willing to donate if they know that their donation is going a little bit further with that match. Another option is profit shares. These are available at a lot of restaurants usually, and they usually work best if you go in as a group with some other students. Essentially, you work with maybe Chipotle or Potbelly or Chick-fil-A, they all have them, and you work with their marketing, and they set aside a day and a certain number of hours. And in those hours, you get a percentage of all of the sales that they make during those hours. You can see for Chipotle, you get 33% of the sales, Potbelly 25%, Chick-fil-A 15%. So it's a great way. You reach out to your friends, you say, hey, if you'd like to support me getting abroad, please come have lunch at Potbelly during these hours, and that will help fund my study abroad experience, okay? If you're doing it as a group, it's a great way to get to know other students who are planning on study abroad, okay? A few other general ideas that you see on your screen there. Obviously, we kind of have to rethink some of these in the era of COVID. So be creative. Think about what you can do online and what resources you have available. One that stood out to me, we had a student who just went out and bought an Apple Watch, but then turned around and auctioned it to her church in a fundraising effort for her study abroad experience. And she was able to make a good bit of money on that. So there are definitely ideas, ways to get creative. Think about your resources, think about your community and your target audience. As I mentioned, this has been the third session in our series. Upcoming sessions you can see on your screen there. We hope to see you there as well. And all sessions are being recorded, so the recordings are available. If you could go ahead, Kelly, and Kelly's going to send you a link to a survey. We'd love to get your input, your feedback, so that we can better improve our future sessions. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And if you have any questions for either me or Mapu or Annika, please let us know.